Okay, I am bronzier than I thought I would be, but that's okay because today we are celebrating summer and we are celebrating a new Midi palette from Natasha Denona, the Natasha Denona Tan palette. It's been a while since we've had a Natasha Denona Midi palette. These are my favorite Natasha Denona palettes. They're easy to work with, easy to travel with, and I think they give you a good bang for your buck. She has not come out with one of these, I think, since Bloom last spring. She did come out with two 18 pan palettes last fall, but those, in the words of Charlotte Holdcroft, did not tickle my pickle. But I'm excited to see a new palette, and I love this box from Natasha Denona. So if looking at swatches, I have not opened this yet, I'm scared. If looking at a couple of looks and comparisons to Natasha Denona's already existing browns collection sounds good to you, then like, subscribe, follow along, shop my links, unsolicited advice, Instagram, and YouTube. Okay, so Natasha Denona has come out with this new tan palette, and at first I thought, oh god, we need another one of these. But upon closer inspection of some other people's videos, I haven't opened this yet, I thought, well, this actually looks kind of interesting, and it's nuanced, more nuanced than some of the others. So, made in Italy, just like all of her others. This is $72. These have gone up. They were $65, and then they were $69, and now they're $72. You know, it's what's going on. But you're looking at 15 shades. You've got creamy mattes, silky mattes, duochromes, multichromes, metallics, and sparkling foils. So it's still a good value. I think it's still the best value for $72. So if you're unfamiliar with Natasha Denona, this is, I don't know, maybe the 15th mini palette she's come out with. She's had larger, she's had smaller. And then she also has her minis. I'm not really going to compare to the minis today, but I am going to compare to some of her other popular midi-sized palettes. Now, this is the tan palette. I love this packaging. And like I said, made in Italy. And what does it have? What's the shelf life on her? 24 months. So it's good. I've got some that are far older than this. If you keep them cool, keep them in a dry place, they'll be fine. And like all Natasha Denona palettes, it has the little pinholes on the back. So if you wanted, you could push them out and create your own custom palette. I wonder if they tell you on the back. I've never looked. If they tell you on the back what palette they came from and the location. That would be good, especially if you like to create your own. Her selling blanks would also be a good idea. But whatever. So let's take a look at this beauty. Okay. So I can tell you on first inspection, it is not as warm as I thought it would be. It's more neutral and smoky than I thought it would be. But really beautiful. Again, we've got a variety of formulas, and some of them look incredibly sparkly, which is something that I've been missing from Natasha Denona. In the fall, she came out with these two Sculpt Texture Tone palettes, both in browns. And I like the concept, but I just didn't think that the palettes delivered what I wanted. The shimmers that were in here were very subtle, and they didn't really stick very well. And I like Natasha Denona in her yucca xenon kind of phase where her shimmers are blinding. So we'll look at the comparison in a minute, but let's begin, shall we, with swatching. So up first, we have the shade Sandal, which is a slip cream. Wow. It's smooth and lightweight. Next we have the color Burnt, which is a sparkling foil shade. It's pretty. Kind of a traditional kind of bronze, maybe a little lighter. Then we have Brook, which I was excited about, and this is a sparkling foiled shade. Really beautiful. It's even got some like little silver or blue kind of reflex in it. Really beautiful. I don't know if you're going to be able to pick that up on camera, but it has some interesting blue and silver kind of reflex in it. Okay, next we have Villa, which is a straight metallic. So these tend to be a little bit more subtle, but nonetheless beautiful. Be a beautiful color for the inner corner. I mean, that is so smooth. It would be nice all over the lid too. And then finally we have Kissed, which is just one of her creamy mattes. Very creamy. Okay, that is not a creamy matte. That is a metallic. I apologize. It's just a very subtle metallic. It's more of a satin. So that's the first row. That's really beautiful. Okay, let's look at the next row, shall we? We have Lazy, which is a creamy matte. It says K matte. Oh, maybe it's a slip cream. It's hard to tell the difference. That's very close to my skin color. So great transition color. Then we have Dip, which is a slip cream. These feel almost wet and kind of cold in the pan, like a putty. They kind of remind me a little bit of like a Prada matte shadow. And they're very thin going on. Then we have Spritz, which is a SW. What would that be? Sparkling Wet Effect. Ooh. Oh, yeah, that feels very different than the others. People like these wet effect ones. They're kind of a little less pigmented, but they are great as like toppers. They really look pretty in that capacity. Then we have Daydream, which is a metallic chocolate brown. Really beautiful. And finally, we have Serene, which is a sparkling foiled, which I think is probably my favorite Natasha formula. It's just the most impactful. So there's the first two rows. You can barely even see that first color over here because it's so close to my skin color. Okay, so let me do the last row. Where are we going to do that? I don't know. Okay, the first is Soft Spot, which is actually the only repeated shade in here. It is in the I Need a Warm palette, and it's a creamy matte and just a beautiful caramely butterscotch kind of transition color. Then we have Celeste, which is a MG. Is that like a multi-chrome? It doesn't look like a multi-chrome. Not really sure what MG is. Then we have Paddle, which is a slip cream matte. These are so nice and thin and beautiful. That one's a little flaky. I might have grabbed just a little too much of that. Then we have Toasted, which is one of her metallics. These are the ones that tend to be a little more subtle. And finally, we have Glide, which is another one of the slip creams. Really thin, almost wet feeling. So here we have it. I would say, like I said, it's very toasty, but it's not warm. It's not as warm as, say, the Golden palette or the I Need a Warm palette. Well, I would hope it's not as warm as the I Need a Warm palette. I would say this is toasty, and I'd say that there's a lot of nuance in here. This is a big winner shade, I would say, as are these. And these are going to be great for transition. So let me take these off my hand, and then I'll come back and we will do a couple of kind of quick looks with this. I just looked in the bathroom when I washed my hands off, and I am smoky. So this is the Natasha Denona concealer, the Natasha Denona foundation, which I like. It's not one of my all-time favorites, but I do like it. And then I've got my Westman Atelier, the Duo in Soleil 1 as my bronzer. I've got Honeymoon, one of the new spring-summer releases from YSL, as my blush. And I've got the new Tom Ford highlighter on. And that combination is very sun-kissed. So I think that'll be perfect for this. When looking at the swatches in a different light, one thing I did realize, one thing I used to love was when like Patty Alonso or some of the other creators would do 5 looks, 1 palette, and you really could get 5 dramatically different looks from a Natasha Denona or like a Pat McGrath, somebody like that. That is not really the direction that Natasha has been doing with her last few palettes. Even the really colorful ones, when she's done like the purple palette a few years ago, it was still incredibly curated and monochromatic, and that's how this palette is. Now we'll try to get 2 very different looks today, but I don't know how different they'll be. And that's one thing I kind of miss about Natasha Denona, is you used to be able to get a variety of looks. These are all going to be kind of within the same family, which is great if you're not somebody who has a ton of Natasha Denona. But I kind of like to be a little more adventurous. So I'm going to go grab my rougher brushes, and then we'll come back and start the looks. Okay, let's bring you in a little closer, shall we? What I'll try to do is one sort of lighter look and then one that's a little bit more dramatic. And all I've got on my eyes is my Rare Beauty eyeshadow primer. With these sparkling foiled shades, I do typically like to use like a Pat McGrath Intensify wand or something like that. Or definitely put them on with your finger just to prevent fallout. But today I won't use that because I want you to get just a good idea of what they look like on their own. So I'm going to start with this shade Lazy, and I'm going to run that through my crease. This is the one that I felt pretty much was my skin color, maybe a little peachier, but that's great as a blending shade. I don't think it's going to give me anything as far as like lightening or throwing it on under my brow. It's a little too dark for that, but it's great for this kind of thing. And I'm currently using a Rever 15 Mini. Okay, so let's see, where do we want to go? Well, let's make this one a little bit more, I don't know. Let's go and make this one a little bit more wearable. So I'm going to go into the color Sandal on that same brush, and I'm going to place that on this outer portion here. That's a pretty color. I think it's described as kind of a burnt caramel on her website. Maybe I will try to do a 5 looks 1 palette with this. The thing is, we have so much new product coming out between this and Charlotte Tilbury. Oh my God, I almost said Charlotte Tilbury. I do not review Charlotte Tilbury. Lisa Eldridge and Marc Jacobs Beauty and the new Louis Vuitton liners, that it may be a little bit, but I wouldn't mind doing that. I'm going to go in with just a little bit of the color Dip on the same brush and run that just a little bit out here. You could avoid this if you don't want to have any smoke. That gives quite a bit of smoke. That's a deep dark color. Because it's that kind of, is that a slip cream? Yeah. So you're not really going to have to worry about fallout with that, and they are easy to blend. So I can continue to use this brush, and as you can see, I can diffuse it. Okay, so let's see, what do we want to do? Well, I said we'll do a little bit lighter on this one. So I'll probably use a color or two that I wouldn't normally use because I just want to show off as many colors as possible. So on my Rever 21, I'm going to use the color Toasted, which is just one of the basic kind of metallics that's in here. Really beautiful, tend to be a little more subtle. I am glad that she included more of her high shine formula in here as well, because I like these metallics, but they're good as kind of transition. I like another, I like something a little sparklier to be the star of the show. So let's see, let's go in with Celeste. Celeste is this is the MG. I have no idea what that means. Is it a multi-chrome? Metallic? Something. Okay. So we're going to go in with MG. Okay, this is more foiled and it is a little bit flaky. So what I would recommend for this one, although I'm not seeing a ton of fallout, I'm going to go in with my finger and warm this product up a little bit because the flakes are a little bit larger on this product. Yeah, that warms it up and makes it just a little bit more even. It's a pretty color though. Okay, finally for the inner corner, the only real color in here that's light enough, if I could say that would like one more shade in here, it might be to add a shade that's kind of a very light sparkly color. The lightest one in here is Villa, which I think will work, but it is the lightest one in here. It is pretty though. This is just a metallic, which is what you kind of want on your inner corner. I just wish that maybe there was one that was just slightly lighter. But this is pretty. And then under, let's see, what do we want to do? Let's run a little of Kissed. Again, I'm using as many colors as I can just to show you, but Kissed is a metallic shade. And I'm going to run that under here just to show you that these metallics can be used in these kind of tricky places, the basic metallic ones, because they are not prone to fallout and they're not really going to exaggerate any lines you have, which I don't have any, of course, having just turned 44 this week. I'm going to go back in a little bit with that Toasted color just to meld those two together just a little bit more so there's not as much of a harsh line. So this was the more basic look. Now, it could have been much more basic had I not used that dip color. That is a very dramatic color. I could have had it more like daytime. But this was my more wearable look. So let's take a look at the other side, shall we? And on that one, I think what I'm going to do is start with Let me grab a different brush. I have a, I'm going to use this 14. So I'm going to grab the shade Paddle, which is a little bit cooler and a little deeper than that Lazy shade. Yeah, it already is showing up more. My shirt matches the look today. I would like to say I planned it, but I did not. Can we discuss, while I'm doing this, the Euphoria finale? I would love to know your thoughts. I thought it was entertaining. I thought this whole season of Euphoria was entertaining. I'll give it that. Was it what it was a few years ago? No, but they are grown-ups now. It's always been a messy show. I think this revisionist history that it was some sort of masterpiece before, it was not. It's always been messy. This season, it's just showed it in a different light. Okay, I'm going to grab the shade Glide, which is the slip cream. I really like these slip creams because they don't have fallout. That's a little bit more neutral than that dip color was. Or no, I take that back. The dip color and this are pretty neutral. The dip color is just so much deeper and more intense. Okay. And just for shits and giggles, I'm going to run the color Sandal just to see if there's any difference under. And it's also a slip cream. It's a little warmer, but that's one of the ones where maybe one of those, either Sandal or Glide, could have been chosen and then replaced with a lighter shade, because they are very similar. One's just warmer than the other. They're similar depths. Okay, now I want to go and do very dramatic. So I'm going to grab some of that dip shade again. But I'm going to keep it really close to the lash line down here. And I kind of want to focus on, well, the two sparkling shadows, the two sparkling foils that are in the middle, I think are the stars. Well, one is a wet look and one is a sparkling foil. But you can see here, Brook on the bottom and Spritz on the top are kind of the stars of this palette, I think. Similar depths again, but you know, different undertones. And one's got gold sparkles, one's got kind of bluish sparkles. So let's go ahead and try the bluish one. I think that'll be interesting. Maybe we'll try both. It won't look great probably, but who knows. Okay, so let me grab Brook, and these sparkling foiled shades sometimes require a finger, but let's see. That's a pretty shade. It's got some purpley plum in there too. That's quite interesting. I saw Alicia Archer say that it reminded her a lot of the Coco Pave liner from Victoria Beckham. I can totally see that. This is a very cool look. What I'm going to do is warm it up by including that spritz. And again, I probably wouldn't normally, but I just want to show you as many colors as I can today. And the spritz is that wet effect. These can have fallout. Yeah, I just felt a little bit. So I recommend using a Pat McGrath. Isn't that interesting? Because they're similar in depth. I mean, you can see there's gold over here and there's that kind of blue over here, but they merge together. I wonder if this is the one. She said one of these was backfilled. This one feels a little different in the pan. I wonder if this is the one that was backfilled. I can see it is more gold over here and more kind of cool over here. It's an interesting combination. Again, don't know if I would normally do it, but today we will try out. Now I'm going to grab Celeste, which is the metallic shade. Just to brighten up this corner, because this is a pretty heavy dark look. And again, because there's only the one really kind of light shade in here, the Villa, that's what I'm going to have to use for the inner corner. You know, unless I want to go out of the palette, I really don't. And that works, don't get me wrong. It's just a little deep for me. But it's an interesting combo. I probably would just do, you can see there I have Fallout. I probably would just do one or the other of the sparkling shades, those kind of star shades. But at least this way you can see them both. So those are two dramatically different looks. I wondered if I would be able to do that. Well, I did get two, and I could definitely get looks that are lighter or warmer than these. But I think this is a good kind of start. So what I'm going to do now is, let's see, let's grab the Natasha Denona taupe liner. Love this liner. It came out last year with her Mini Gloom palette. And that is one that I would love to see. That whole collection, the taupe, the Mini Gloom, I would love to see in a Midi size. It was in the mini, the little 5-pan. I would love to see that be a way that she can dip back into color a little bit. That'd be beautiful for the fall. Okay, and then for mascara, I've just got, you can pick your favorite brown. I just happen to have the Lisa Eldridge on me right now, so I'm just going to put a little of that on. And then we'll look at comparisons. This Lisa Eldridge Burnt Umber is a little warmer than a lot of brown mascaras. And you can kind of see that when it's on. It adds a nice mix. Whatever's going on in this upper corner here is a wee bit patchy. Let's see if I can work that out. Yep, so that wasn't the shadow. That was probably the primer. Okay, so here we have two dramatically different, but still obviously within the same family looks. So let me go grab a lip that I think will go with it, and then we'll get to comparisons, okay? I'll be right back. Okay, so for a lip, since we're going to keep in this kind of toasty brown look, I grabbed one of the new 4 shades of the Gloss Bomb Sticks from Rihanna. This is one of the 4 new shades, Lust Bunny. So I'm going to pair that with one of her liners. This one is in Traced Out. I don't know. If maybe the cap came off of that. That was not an easy application. And normally those are. I don't know if, like I said, maybe the cap came off. and it dried out a little. If anything, it's a little bit firmer than they normally are, and I don't mind that. I actually like that. Normally, the Fenty liners, kind of like the Merit ones, can be a little slippy on me. This was fine. It wasn't smooth putting on because of that. But again, so we have Lust Bunny, and this is a beautiful kind of rusty nude color. So I think it'll go well with these. I love this formula. Yeah. You can see there, though, it's not merging well and blending like it normally does. I think that liner maybe a little dried out. It just means I can put on a little bit more. And now it's working. And that's a pretty color. A lot of brown going on here. So I would say if you have a lot of Natasha Denona palettes, you may already have some of these colors, but you may not have the formula. And there's some nuance in here I could see really, really, really beautiful for summer. I wanted to kind of go through, I didn't pull, like I said, any of her mini 5-pan palettes, but I wanted to go through her kind of brown collection and see where this stacked up. Now, her first big brown palette that got a lot of attention, and for the longest time, ironically, was her neutral palette. It was kind of the only neutral palette she had, was the Biba palette. And this was in her old larger size. But who would be calling me? But they don't produce this anymore, but for the longest time this was the only brown palette you could get, and it has a few metallics, but it is mostly mattes. And comparing them, let's see, there's some similar colors, but this is a very different palette. This is closer to even maybe like those 18 pans that came out at the holidays, which we are going to look at. Okay, the next one I thought that might be close was the Glam palette. I think it's going to be cooler. Well, it's certainly got more pinks and gray in it, but I don't know that this is necessarily cooler. It's maybe a little more desaturated. And of course, it's an older palette, so it doesn't have some of the fancy new formulas in it. Then the next one is the bronze palette, which I really love. I know that when I put this out, this is going to be hella warm compared. And yeah, it is. It's just a lot toastier, more reds, though I do love those two purples up at the top. That's something she used to do. If she were to come out with this palette now, those purples up at the top would not be there. They would be like some sort of dark brown. She used to include kind of a little swing in each palette, but she's become more curated. But this one's not really close at all. Then we have the I Need a Nude, which I think is going to be, this is a gorgeous palette, but I think this is going to be much more desaturated. Yeah, you can see there though. There's a little similarity, but not close. Then we have I Need a Warm, which I have seen there's an I Need a Cool coming down the pike, so that'll be interesting. This one is much warmer than this one. This one is more neutral, especially in comparison to this one. This one's got the more peachy reddish tones in it. The one that I think is actually probably the closest is the Golden palette. Now this is not the original gold that had the beautiful teal and mustard in it. This was the redo where she went to this more curated, you know, very monochrome. But that's probably the closest. This came out, I think, 2 years ago, and that's very close. You see that white shade in the middle, Aura? That is the one shade I wish that there was something like that in here, because that's a perfect inner corner color. And I'll show you, just as a comparison, the lightest color in this new palette is Villa, which was beautiful. But then the lightest in this golden palette is Aura. It's a different formula. This is a lot lighter. But I think you can see that the top one is just a little bit lighter, maybe a little more versatile, but they're both beautiful colors nonetheless. That's the closest of the Midi palettes. Now, she also came out with these during the fall last year. Again, I talked about them. I wasn't a huge fan of them. But the Eye Sculpt and Shade Texture palettes, of course, there's going to be some similarities with the mattes, just because you've got 18 essentially mattes here. The closest one, though, is probably going to be the darker of the two that came out with that series, the Eye Shape Dramatic one. And this probably is the closest of those two. But again, this is a little different. I would say the golden is definitely probably the closest, but this is much more neutral than that. So if you like these kind of tones, do you have them? Yeah, you may not have the formula, but it's nuanced and it's really beautiful. This will sell well. It's a toasty, really beautiful summer fall palette. And so I really like it. I would say this is a win for her after last year, which outside of that one little mini palette was kind of a I think this is back to form. I think it's really good. The formulas are really, really good. But I would like to see, maybe for the holidays this year or the fall, something to give us a little, take a couple of shades out of here and replace them with something that's wildly different. And or give us like a palette like Yucca or Xenon, which were monochromatic, either greens or blacks like the Xenon, but they gave us a lot of variety. But I would say this is really good and I'm pleased with it. So coming up, we have new Marc Jacobs. I'll probably have to split that into 2 videos so it's not 6 hours long. But also the new Marilyn Monroe collection from Lisa Eldridge in collaboration with the Marilyn Monroe estate. And then again, we will be getting in June the new Louis Vuitton Le Bouteille liners. So we've got a lot coming. So if you like this kind of content, then I really would appreciate it. If you like, subscribe, follow along, shop my links. It doesn't cost you anything, but it helps out the channel. And recommend me if you know others who might like this kind of content. I think this is a winner. So thanks for joining me today. And yeah, I appreciate you. Bye, everybody.